in the last few years. Okay, very good, Matt. Number 7, or PFAS update.
All right, thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. So the PFAS update, starting on page 47, I believe, of your packet. So this is an information item, and it's a report that's give an update on everything related to PFAS. So there's quite a bit of information in here. I'm going to do my best to go over it and explain it for the most part, and do it in a timely manner if I can. So I'll start with the state and federal regulators have been studying the health effects of per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. That's what PFAS is. And in accordance with their guidance, water and wastewater agencies such as us, LACSD, have been testing for PFAS in both water and wastewater. In 2023, the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, began a rulemaking process to create regulation related to PFAS in drinking water. Details of our activities are provided in this report. I'm going to go over some of those. And we have a new website that we're updating as results come in, and that's where people can go to get facts related to PFAS and updated sample results. And that's a great start for the community to start there. Next, I'll just add there's a couple bullet points I have here for an article I read in this magazine by AWWA. I'll just point it out. Its article was "Putting Communities Ahead of Polluters, Alleviating Taxpayers' Burden of Treating PFAS Contaminated Water." But it has a lot of good information in here. Mentions, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, PFAS are found in nearly half of the tap water in the United States. These man-made chemicals have been used in industry and consumer products since the 1950s and can be found in drinking water, air, and food supply, which affect communities and pose a threat across rural, suburban, and urban communities. The Center for Disease Control has found that most people in the United States have been exposed to some levels of PFAS. In fact, the study suggests that PFAS chemicals could be found in 98% of the U.S. population. So that's all information in this article published by the American Water Works Association. So that's a little bit about PFAS, what it is. We're learning it's everywhere, as we kind of mentioned in the last meeting. It's in the air, it's in the environment. So we're trying our best to understand where the lake might be getting contaminated from, along with dealing with the issue at hand with the PFAS contamination in the lake at the moment. So what we've done is required sampling, and I'm just going to go through this fairly quickly. The PFAS sampling that's been conducted, there was a statewide order in 2020 required by the State Water Resources Control Board, and that was issued in July of 2020. And that was a statewide investigative order for all publicly owned treatment works, and that's all wastewater plants, 1 million gallons per day or greater. In that order I mentioned in the last meeting, they basically kind of said what I mentioned in these other bullet points, that it was expected to find PFAS in wastewater effluent. It had been found in 100% of the samples previous. And again, I mentioned blood samples. So we did the sampling and we had some trace hits, like we're getting similarly in the lake and some of our other sources. Trace, what I mean by that is parts per trillion, and these levels are so low they can barely detect them. So those samples were taken in 4 consecutive quarters, beginning in the 4th quarter of 2020, going into the 3rd quarter of 2021. So in 2023, we began sampling for the unregulated contaminated monitoring rule 5. That's a requirement from the EPA. And that's a requirement for us to sample our finished drinking water 4 consecutive quarters. And that's what we are in the process of doing. Bernina has been sampled for 4 consecutive quarters. Cedar Glen's 4th quarter will be sampled this current quarter we're in February, next month. Now, these samples are something we have to wait upon the EPA to give us basically our sample window. We receive a box of samples. It shows up, it says your sampling windows, for example, February 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. Have to take the samples within that period, have to follow the instructions, very detailed in the package, send it to a third-party lab. Unfortunately, the results through that process has taken quite a while. The local labs are inundated. We're having to, these samples are going to a second subcontract lab. We take them to a clinical lab in San Bernardino, and they take them all the way up to Bakersfield to be processed at BSK Laboratories. So the labs are inundated, And so we're struggling with results for those ones. It's taken us about 4 months, roughly, to get results through this process. There's a separate process since we had some hits in the finished water, the trace amounts that you guys are aware of that we talked about at the last meeting as well. The Division of Drinking Water said we have another general order that we were required now to do ongoing quarterly sampling of our raw water sources. That would be Bernina treatment plant, Cedar Glen treatment plant, and our 3 highest producing wells. So the first step was taken on October 3rd. And the second set was, those results are available, they've been provided in this packet. Same with the other samples I just spoke on, the UCMR5, the wastewater samples that were done, those are all included in this packet. So the second set, quarterly set, was just taken on January 11th. So we're still waiting on those results. These are the raw water results. So we're waiting on those results. So aside from the required sampling that I've just talked about, the district has done a lot of voluntary sampling to try to understand where this might be coming from. We've had the techs, as you guys know, in Lake Arrowhead, in Grass Valley Lake, and Papoose Lake. That was a very good suggestion by a member from the public last meeting. We took them up on that, took samples at Papoose Lake prior to the rainstorm on the 18th, after the rainstorm on the 21st, to see if why not. So gentlemen will see there's a map included that shows lots of different sample locations. We've taken samples. So that basically is a lot of the sampling we've done, and we've actually added a few sites. So tomorrow we're going to go actually take 16 more samples. We're going to do 12 of the samples that we've already taken. So on the list you guys have voluntary samples. We're going to take there's 14 there listed. We're going to take 12 of them. The 2 we're not going to take are the ion exchange effluent and recycled water, because those are treated water. Tomorrow we're taking raw surface waters. So we're going to take the other 12, and we added 4 because we got some ticks. We got some hits on the Cedar Glen drainage, and we got some hits on the clubhouse drainage, and that was upstream of the country club. So we're trying to chase this upstream and try to see if there's an area or areas, industry, up in Twin Peaks, for example. There's areas up in that area, or creeks, the creek that runs up in that area. There's some industry up there, laundromats, fire departments. Fire departments may have trained with this firefighting foam in the past, so we are trying to reach out to local fire departments to see if they've done any training, if they recently have they in years past. We don't quite have that information yet, but we're doing our best to try to figure out where has this come from. Is it still coming from somewhere? So we can kind of deal with that on a separate level, but at the same time, we're dealing with the problem at hand as far as the contamination in the lake and the drinking water supply. So I'll get to that in a minute, but aside from all the sampling we've done, required voluntary sampling, the district has put a concerted effort into the wastewater collection system over the last decade plus. In total, the district has slip lined about 90% of the lake main that goes around the entire lake, the trunk main. 10% of that is left, and it's in the process of being completed in the near future. During the past 10 years, we've only had 1 sanitary sewer overflow make it to Lake Arrowhead, and that was not by fault of the district. There was a contractor doing work that put some rebar through the lake main. So we've done everything we can. We continue to do everything we can to protect drinking water, the public health. That's our top priorities around here. The district has completed, you'll see in your packet, 540 pipe repairs, replaced over 14,000 feet of pipeline, slip lined over 30,000 feet of pipeline. In addition, rehabilitated over 2,000 manholes, CCT inspected 290 miles of sewer, smoke tested 140 miles of sewer, replaced duty pumps at our lift station, like starting at our high volume ones. And again, we've seen all this pay off because we've only had 1 stoppage make the lake, and it wasn't on the district's behalf. It was a mistake made by a contractor. So we've spent just in some of this alone over $14 million in that same time period in upgrading the collection system to keep the wastewater in the collection system and out of the lake. And I think we've done a pretty good job. So aside from that, couple bullet points on here. We had a virtual meeting with a company called Battelle on Thursday, the January 11th. You know, interesting. They've got a lot of services. They've been dealing with PFAS. They're kind of on the East Coast, Ohio, Michigan. Lady was talking about Michigan. That's where 3M is born. So she's very up to speed on PFAS. So they have services that might be able to help us as far as fingerprint PFAS, and we're not quite sure if that's the if that's something that's going to fit for us or not. We don't know the cost associated with this, but so for example, talking to them, when we had to do the required PFAS sampling, we analyzed for 30 analytes of the PFAS family. They have a process, they can break that down into 520 different PFAS analytes. So to try to explain to you guys like what we're dealing with here, it's a family of chemicals that is unlike anything else that we've ever dealt with or the industry has dealt with. And labs are being asked to detect this chemical at levels that they've never been asked to detect things at. We're talking like 1-2 parts per trillion. So we're doing everything we can. The lab's doing everything they can. So we asked for a detailed quote on their services, see if that'll fit. Aside from that, we met with Dudek and we had a site visit with Dudek. Dudek's an engineering firm. We've done work in the past. Very bright team. Looking very forward to work with them. I've got Mr. Greg Guillen online. I'll cut to him in a second. I just have a couple more bullet points I want to get to, but we met with them. We did site visits at Bernina and Cedar Glen and our ion exchange plant. We're trying to address drinking water treatment for PFAS right now. Wastewater treatment is a whole different animal. So we're dealing with drinking water treatment right now and dealing with the levels of PFAS that we understand are in the lake and in the groundwater, which are very minute. Since I'm on that subject right now, groundwater, I just mentioned that last meeting we had results for 1 well of being non-detect. Now we have additional 2 wells, well 1 and well 8. We said we're going to sample at the last meeting we have non-detect for all the analytes that we tested for. So we have a couple of hits in wells 2 and 5. Again, with like a couple of these analytes out of this large family of chemicals. So we're trying to understand what this means. And again, we're looking towards other professionals within the industry to help us out. Now I'll just close out with going back to the same article, which has some great information in here. Talking about treatment, it says early estimates of the cost of removing PFAS from drinking water nationwide are about $400 billion. Interesting when you realize that like 3M is paying $12 billion settlement. Okay, DuPont's paying like $1.2 billion. This is going to cost the nation $400 billion to deal with this. So the burden to cover PFAS cleanup costs and to meet accelerating federal drinking water regulations unfortunately falls on state and local governments and not on PFAS manufacturers. This article says, for example, the AWWA estimates that it could cost $3.2 to $5.7 billion annually to implement technologies that address the EPA's standard for PFAS in the water. So it's going to cost a lot of money for everybody, not just us. So for states that have already set drinking water limits for PFAS, such as New Jersey, Massachusetts, Michigan, and New York, compliance costs are quickly creeping up and starting to affect drinking water rates. Many communities around the country impacted by PFAS are facing billions of dollars for new treatment technology. I mention all this because, again, it's going to be very expensive, but I also wanted to just remind the room that at the last meeting, the general manager had an action item to get approval to move forward with an application to try to find some financial assistance to the state to help us with these high dollar costs of treatment. So the district's doing everything we can. I can assure you that we take public health and drinking water quality. That's 1 and 1A. I mean, that's what we do. So we take this very seriously. We have since day one, and we're doing our best to stay ahead of the curve, ahead of the game. Again, so I'm going to turn it over to Greg Guillen, who's online with Dudek. He's the gentleman. He's going to help us look at different alternatives and options for drinking water treatment for PFAS. And again, we're looking very forward to working with him and his team. So Greg, if you're there, if you could pick up where I left off.
You're breaking up. Do you want? Greg, we're having a hard time hearing you.
Second. How's that? Is that any better?
Yes.
A lot better.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Well, I guess I'll start from the beginning here. So thank you, Matt. And as Matt was saying, Dunick was up in Arrowhead last week getting a tour of the facility. So we sat down with a couple of Arrowhead staff and got a real good handle on the problem up there in terms of the drinking water and PFAS situation. And what Dudek is going to do is take in that problem, understand it, and come up with some solutions that Arrowhead will hopefully be able to move forward with in remediating some of the PFAS in the drinking water. So specifically what we looked at were the sources of drinking water and the existing drinking water facilities. Bernina, Cedar Glen, and the ion exchange plant. So we have a good handle on what's at those facilities, the available area for some additional treatment if needed, and just kind of understanding how all of those different treatment facilities work in concert to provide drinking water to the community. And so what we're going to be doing is developing a preliminary design report that will look at ways of solving the problem, right? What is the most appropriate technology for removing PFAS from drinking water? We're going to look at several alternative treatment technologies. That analysis will then narrow in on what is the most appropriate, cost-effective, best removal technology for your particular community, and help develop some of the design criteria for those systems. Where are they going to sit in the district? How much space are they going to require? Are they going to require more operations personnel? Are they going to require more testing, power, chemical, etc.? Come up with some costs for what are those systems, what's it going to cost to construct? What's it going to cost to operate those facilities? And so that design criteria that we'll develop in the PDR will then lend itself to a full design of treatment facilities that the district can pursue if they want to construct those. So right now we just got kicked off last week. We've got a mountain of information that Matt and his crew have shared with us that we're sifting through right now, including lots of water quality from the various sources up there on the mountain. So we are actively combing through that information right now. Already started outlining our report, talking to vendors that supply the actual treatment technologies, and already developing our cost estimates and site layout requirements for the PFAS treatment systems. So everything's moving along pretty quickly here, and we are targeting to have a draft of this preliminary design report back to the district in March. So, Matt, I'm not sure if I left anything out there. It's kind of a lot in a little bit of time, but if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask.
Greg, this is John Worm on the board here. And so can you tell us when you first started on this? Because I think we let the contract out in January, correct?
In December.
In December, okay. So you've been working for approximately how long you've been working on this?
We've been working on this in earnest for a little over a week. We've got some information as we were contracting, and then we were actually able to go and kick off the project last week on site at the various water treatment facilities.
Yeah, it took a few weeks for, their proposal, the contract negotiation.
Of course, yeah. Okay. Any members of the board have any questions for Greg?
No question from Matt.
Okay, or Matt?
You said that we took samples from different areas and we sent them to these labs. Are we mandated when we take these samples to send them to specific labs? Because you said these labs are very, I understand they're overwhelmed. I've been watching documentaries and doing all kinds of things online to try and figure out some of this. Everybody has.
So,
This entire board drinks the same water all you guys do. We're all full-time mountain residents. And I understand that everybody's overwhelmed. Are we mandated to send these samples to the labs around here that are backed up, or are they backed up across the nation? Can we
well,
expedite things on this, or?
I can say that for the unregulated contaminant monitoring rule that's head up by the EPA, we are required to use their lab. But these other ones, we're using different labs. We're getting results back for quicker, like a few weeks, 3 weeks versus months. So the finished water results, those are the ones that we're required to take through the EPA to the UCMR 5. And those are the ones that are specific instructions, detailed lab, specific lab. And with the other ones, we are getting results quicker than that. So I didn't mean to scare you and everyone. We're not waiting 4 months for all of them, but for the UCMR 5 finished water, we have that.
You didn't scare me. I understand.
But I will say the labs locally, the ones that are even giving us better turnarounds, there's issues there. I mean, there's issues with the labs. We've had issues with errors at the lab. I mean, talking to people at the lab, they're just doing things they've never had to do. They're seeing volume they've never seen before. They're short staffed like everyone else. So, and there's hold times, very specific hold times on some of these. So we have to get them locally, and but we can choose on some of these samples, but there's not a whole lot of options for certified labs that are local.
Also, I have also read that, the science changes constantly on this, constantly. You mentioned that they test for 500 and something different.
This,
Sites.
yeah, one company does, yeah.
Okay. I was reading, there's over 12,000 different types of PFAS. We only test for 500. Is that because the 500 is asked specifically by the state or whatever entity that we answer to?
Well, we actually are only required to sample for like 30 of the analytes. And that's what the EPA has selected, and how they came up with those, and how this other entity has the ability to analyze 520. I don't have the answer to that.
Well, there's a reason the EPA chose those, I think it's 29, because they're long chain PFAS, which don't break down in the environment, and they are more accumulated in the human body. But the short chain PFAS don't stay in the human body, and they don't believe they have the same toxicity. So that's why they focused on those long chain ones. And so they're kind of phasing out long chain PFAS, and they're trying to keep it to the shorter chain because there's not as much effect in it.
And my last question is, first I read, and it was an older article, it was talking about a carbon type of filter that they use for, and now I read one put out this last year that was talking to reverse osmosis. Have they figured out what is the more efficient filter for taking all these out of the water?
Greg, would you like to?
Yeah, sure. And yeah, in our PDR, I mentioned we're going to look at different removal technologies. Reverse osmosis being one of them. The other two are activated carbon and ion exchange. And those are your more, I'll say, traditional PFAS removal technologies. There's some other stuff out there that's kind of on the bleeding edge of development that, might be appropriate to look at in 5 to 10 years from now, but the technology is just not that mature yet. So costs are, we're looking at some of these technologies for a different project. Very cool stuff out there. Things that destroy PFAS, not just remove it, but destroy it. So there's stuff out there on I would say the far horizon, but if you were to try to implement those today, it would be very, very, very expensive. So we in our PDR are going to look at things that are implementable sooner rather now, right? Sooner rather than later.
But for a home, is that what you're talking about? No, he's talking about for our big treatment plant. But for a home, I would not recommend reverse osmosis. It's going to remove all of the great things in drinking water that we are grateful to have. Minerals and those kinds of things are good for people to be in their water. Reverse osmosis will waste a lot of water too. So that's why they have to remineralize the water. There are filters that are NSF certified to remove PFAS. So there are a lot of websites where you can find their recommendations. Consumer Reports had an article that had different filters that they recommended. So for the home, I would recommend those sources.
I have a question for Greg. So everyone knows that these long chain chemicals, they're not going to break down. So when we're pulling them out of the water, what is our disposal of them going to be? What's that going to look like? Because they're not going to go anywhere. It's not like we're going to have them stored somewhere. What do we do when whatever we're doing fills up? Where do we send that? And what's the cost of that? Are you building the cost into that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, for example, the activated carbon and the ion exchange technologies, that PFAS is stored to that material, right? And so once that material has become exhausted, how do you deal with it? And our costs will include disposal of those. So it'd be, for example, contracted with a vendor of that media who will take your old stuff, give you new, and they will dispose of it. Either they regenerate it. There's potential applications for regenerated carbon. You can't use it again in a water treatment application, but you could, burn some of the PFAS off of it. The ion exchange resin, you treat it such that you kick off the PFAS, and then you have a very concentrated volume of PFAS that you can then destroy the PFAS. But that would not be, at least the models we're looking at, that would not be the responsibility of the district to deal with that destruction of the PFAS off of those two media. It'd be a contracted service with a media supplier. For RO, for reverse osmosis, that PFAS would end up in a concentrated brine, and that's going to be one of the drawbacks of that technology is now you have which potentially a pretty large volume of brine that's very salty and concentrated in all the things that you didn't want to drink in the first place, right? So how do you dispose of that? Maybe there's some other technologies out there where you can destroy the PFAS in that, but those are, like I said, very, very expensive. Some folks are able to have the ability to put the RO brine in a brine line. You all don't appear to me to be anywhere near a brine line. There's the Inland Empire brine line, but I'm actually looking at a project for that right now that PFAS is a concern in that brine line. So even the managers of that brine line are looking at what to do with the PFAS in that line. So to answer your question, the sorptive media, there will be an O&M cost associated with disposal of that exhausted media. The RO scenario would have to look at what do you do with the brine, and we'll.
So I guess my next question to follow up with that, Greg, and having heard Matt say that the marketplace hasn't necessarily caught up as far as the testing facilities go for the PFAS. Are we going to have issues with this media disposing of it and getting new media, or is the marketplace still behind the curve, or are we going to be okay with that?
I haven't seen that yet. I've seen some bottlenecks in terms of getting these constructed. Long lead times on pressure vessels that would hold these types of media. Long lead time on some of the electronics associated with controlling these types of systems, but I haven't seen an issue with getting media. If this was a a much larger installation for these suppliers, I might be concerned, but I don't see that as a threat today. Now, when everybody, and you guys are not in a unique boat here, right? As you can imagine, a lot of folks are scrambling. People have, I mean, turned off wells, and over the last few years, now they're looking at, okay, gosh, we need to turn those wells up back on. We need some treatment. So they're all looking at the same thing you're all looking right now. So there probably will be a little bit of change in the market, but as of today, I don't see the media being an issue. And one of the questions was about the labs, and I'll echo what Matt said. I've seen not just for PFAS, for everything in general, the labs seem to be overwhelmed, understaffed. It gets really tricky also to start measuring, as Matt said, these are extremely low concentrations of PFAS that you're trying to measure, and it gets more and more complicated. Luckily Lake Arrowhead has otherwise beautiful drinking water, very low salinity. There's nothing in it, snow melt basically, right? So it's probably one of the easier types of water to measure PFAS in. As you get more and more complicated waters, like wastewater, for example, it gets harder and harder to measure PFAS down to those levels reliably. So that's probably why. So for example, clinical might have to be outsourcing that PFAS measurement somewhere else who's more capable of doing that level of analysis.
Bruce?
Yeah, one question. You mentioned we get better, shorter turnarounds on local labs and the required labs that the EPA requires us to go to, 4 months or so. Different testing?
No, same testing, and so we sent it to a place called Great Lakes Environmental. And when we were trying to track down those results, we would reach out to the lab and they would say, the analysis has been done, results are available, but we can't share them with you because you're not the customer. Customer is the EPA. So it's our water, we're not the customer. So we were even told at one point, I believe the results are sitting over there,
So it serves no purpose to go to them.
No, they have a website that we check on our own at least weekly, if not multiple times a week, to try to get these results as fast as possible. We received our first email for the first set of results. So the first samples were taken in January of 23, and we got an email on June 20th of 23 saying that those results were available and that we had received emails in the future for future results, and that's the only email we've received. So we've gone in and retrieved the other results on our own, and that's just unfortunately how it is. And I don't think that's just with us,
So I think I know the answer, but Greg and Dudek, they're working on our drinking water to remove the PFAS from the water, but also studying the sources,
Well,
at least to some degree.
Greg he's gonna ask some other people within his organization. But Battelle is a company that we've reached out to that is also going to be helping us with that.
I mean, I think that in looking at the data that Matt and their staff has provided, it seems like there's many different sources in Lake Arrowhead of the PFAS.
Yes,
I don't think we'll ever be able to eliminate any specific source, but at least we can treat the water.
yes, we can at least get it out of the drinking water for sure.
Which
It
is
would
the main
be,
focus anyway.
I wish it was as easy as blaming one source
And just turning it off.
and turning it off. But
That's not gonna be possible, I don't think.
no, and back to Scott Rundle's question, recycled water is very unlikely to at all be a source for this, because the amount of recycled water that we actually send to the country club is less than 0.5% of the total volume of Lake Arrowhead. So if a tiny amount gets, from the country club into Grass Valley Lake, which also only delivers, 1% of the total volume of Lake Arrowhead. I mean, the concentration of the PFAS would have to be so high in order for it to bring Lake Arrowhead up to a level where it's at, and as far as concentrations go. So, it's unfortunate that it would be great if we could just point to one source or sewer but, Lake Arrowhead has a lot of water in it. It is
Yeah, it does have a lot of water in it, doesn't it?
so, I mean, it
Big
would,
volume.
any source is diluted, you have to imagine. So we've been looking at all the tributaries. We're seeing some higher PFOS in the drainage, but we're not seeing PFOA in any source as high as the lake.
Yes, I noticed. I mean, you're looking at a high number.
It's the
It's
lake.
in the lake rather than the tributaries.
But we need to continue sampling, I mean,
Yes.
two samples aren't enough to tell a story, so we're gonna continue sampling. We're specifically sampling tomorrow because we have stormwater runoff, and then later we'll also do dry weather because we see a little bit different profile in the chemistry. So, that is where we're going.
All right. Any other questions from the board?
You got a comment for the PFAS?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, first off, fabulous job done. You answered all the questions. We were under the impression last month that PFAS was the only one, that it only existed here. Lake Arrowhead. We've been all running scared.
Okay.
Okay, so this is what we came to speak about. Our community of Lake Arrowhead have been deeply concerned regarding the chemical, PFAS, being detected in our lake and drinking water. We have methodically looked for research that has been done regarding this chemical, which is occurring throughout our state and country. Last month, in December, researchers and environmentalists nationwide stated that they are worried about the staggering amount of PFAS found in such things as fresh fish. At least 17 states have issued PFAS related fish consumption advisories. Like I stated, we were under the impression it was only us. Also, we found a study which was performed consisting of 501 lakes, and 500 of those lakes detected the chemical PFAS. The problem is that it exists everywhere in our state and country, and that the state and federal government are ambiguous to what is a safe exposure level. Numerous states state they need more data regarding this toxic chemical PFAS. Our conclusion is obvious, that the PFAS contaminants is not just occurring here in our community, but throughout our state and country. We're not here to focus on other parts of our state or country. We're here to focus entirely on our community of Lake Arrowhead and its surrounding communities, which you all just showed off. Thank you. We expect that LACSD keep us informed on all aspects of this dilemma. By using your website, which gives us great information, and that you have bi-weekly updates, even if there is no change from the prior 2 weeks. This will keep us informed and grounded with the correct information involving our communities. LACSD is the horse in this community, and we need to hear it from the horse's mouth. So we thank you all very much. I'm going home and watching a ball game.
Sir, can we have your name though?
Michael Schultz.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Thank you. Scott? Scott Rundle?
Oh, he went.
Yeah. Okay. Will be monitoring? All right. Does Scott have a comment, or is he playing basketball? Okay,
I'll follow up with him.
all right, thank you.
Hello?
Do you have any contamination in the Papoose Lake? Papoose? Yeah, is there any contamination in that water?
Yes,
Is it as bad as the lake?
no,
How low is it?
6.5.
6.5, yeah.
6.5.
For PFOA.
Level?
Below the state level, but I mean, there's no regulatory action for raw water at this point. In drinking water, there is.
Yeah, what it is, raw water, you get your water from the lake right
Testing
now.
hasn't come back yet, so I'm
Contaminated.
believing everything is
Well, that's-
okay.
Put lake for our water for now, and instead of using this lake water or from any other wells that using it on golf course, then you guys figure out what you're gonna do later with the filtering it. But is there any possibility that you can take the water from there and just do minor filtering and just pump into the system?
I wish,
Yeah, we'd have to have a treatment plant located on Papoose Lake.
Well, you built those, because on the pumps, don't you do that, say whatever it is, that parking lot, whatever you have pending over there, by the hospital, is it right next to the Papoose Lake?
yes,
How difficult would it be taking water from there? to
it's
there?
more of a diversion right issue, so we would have to work with the state to get a different diversion, and we don't own that water. But it's definitely something we can talk about.
Yeah.
As a possibility.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Go ahead.
You need
We'll
to
get to you.
explain. We don't own the water in Papoose Lake.
No.
No. thank you.
Yes, once the water leaves Lake Arrowhead and goes into Papoose Lake, we don't have rights to it any longer.
There's no connection between Papoose and Lake Arrowhead.
Yeah, but it's not our,
Yeah.
it's not our water.
What
We,
is it?
Hesperic, is it Hesperius?
I suppose, the county owns most of Papoose, but the water. is
The water belongs to
probably
the state of
Mojave.
California.
It's
Yeah.
probably Mojave.
I don't think there's a connection any longer. There's
There
no
isn't.
pipe connection.
There is
No.
none, no, there's none going to Papoose.
Yeah, I don't, it's a nice thought, but I don't think we can access it, just from my understanding.
Okay. Somebody else had a comment, question? Yes.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Marilyn Dishon. I just want to know, I'm thrilled to hear what you're doing about the drinking water. As a Lake Arrowhead person my husband swims in the lake all the time. I'd like to know, is there a danger of swimming all the time? And would the LACSD consider testing some of the fish to make sure the fish aren't contaminated? Because we have children that there's two fishing, one a fishing derby and one a trout rodeo, where a lot of children fish, and I think it's important to either warn them, don't eat the fish, or the fish are okay. So since Lake Arrowhead doesn't own the water or the fish once it's in there, and it's under your purview, would you, before those two things happen, be able to test the fish?
ALA has the rights to those fish. They buy those fish.
Yes, but I was told that once they're put in the water, they're not properly available.
LACSD only has the right to take X amount of water off the top. Is that correct? That's the only right we have on Lake Arrowhead.
Okay, but you are in charge of the water, right?
No.
Who's in charge of the water? God? I mean, who's in charge of the
You're
water?
absolutely right.
Well,
No, the
ALA has a right to the water, and then there's state and federal regulations as to, the quality of water.
Okay.
But our only right at the district, as Director Boyson said, is to take a certain amount from the lake each year. We have no role in the management or control of the lake water.
So you're not responsible for the quality of the water?
We're responsible for the quality of water that we serve, and we're allowed to take a certain amount out of the lake.
So maybe I can help. Okay. Water's in Lake Arrowhead.
Yeah.
We, LACSD, have a right to certain amounts of the water, certain acre feet every year. And of course, if we don't reach that, then we have to go get it elsewhere. We can get it from Claw, and there's a couple other spots we can get it, okay? But the water and the fish in that water, unfortunately, are not ours. ALA owns it, and they are territorial about the ownership of the water. Once the water hits the treatment plant and we treat it and send it out, then it's our water.
So I was told the state owns the water and the fish once it goes in.
That's what I was told as well.
The state,
Yeah.
LA owns the land under the lake,
Right.
under the water, they don't own the water.
Right.
no,
They have a recreational water rights, but you're right, you don't,
Yeah, we don't know.
you
that
just
we
have a right
to
to
have
just
recreation.
use it when you do.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to find out if you know who is responsible for the quality of the water you don't take off.
The state is
The state.
responsible for water quality in the Montana region, but I'll speak with, Mike is here from ALA. I'll speak with him about fish and we can come up with a plan because I know people are interested in that.
Very concerned.
Yeah,
Because
I
all
don't.
this, I
Let me-
appreciate it.
Catherine, I think at the prior meeting, you said as far as swimming in the lake,
Yes,
that seems to be completely safe.
yes, so PFAS.
That was
can
a
be-
question you had.
Yeah, it can be ingested and you can breathe, it can be inhaled, but it is not, does not get soaked in through your skin.
And then I think as far as testing for fish, we try to stick with water and wastewater. It's a big enough job.
Right.
So testing for fish, I think that's out of our, maybe not out of our jurisdiction, but out of what we do.
Yes, but just as our neighbor and.
I know. We got our hands
You
full.
have
Carol.
more clout than the Arrowhead Woods homeowners, property owners do.
Yeah.
LACSD has more clout with the county and the state, and I'm just asking if you could, please contact them and have
Okay.
them test our fish that they own, because they don't listen to one or two property owners.
Well, we do.
Okay.
Okay, and I think, I don't think we could be able to test the fish, but I think we could ask somebody.
I'm gonna
about
work
the
with
test.
Mike,
There are
and we will
Okay.
come up with a plan.
All right,
And
Thank you.
just real quick, just on that point, because this is such a pervasive situation. Does ALA have fish put into the lake at times during the year?
Right.
Okay,
Sure.
And they're tested and they're not contaminated, so I wanna.
so there, that's what I was gonna ask, are there
Yeah.
tests done
Yeah,
prior
that's
to
correct.
them coming in? Okay.
Yeah.
They're clean coming in, and my understanding is we don't own them once they're in the water, so it's.
Okay.
It's crazy.
Everybody wants ownership.
Yeah.
all right. Sir,
I'm just curious, I don't, like, you probably haven't been testing long enough yet, but, I'm curious if there's any noticeable trend yet as to if it's increasing, or is it a stable amount? Is it, is more being added gradually that we don't know where it's coming from, or is it something that's been in the lake for a long time?
Matt.
I would say the numbers we're seeing right now are fairly stable, but every time we get sample results, they're kind of all over the place sometimes. I mean, as far as the levels in the lake right now are fairly stable, 16 parts per trillion. But yeah, the waterways, I mean, we haven't seen any increases, but I can say, like, when we get these results again, like there's 29 analytes that they're testing for, and we're trying to figure out, like, this tributary has a hit for a couple of them, this one has a hit for a couple of them, the lake's got one, and so, but I would say we don't see increasing levels, and to answer your question, how long has it been in there? That's a good question, but probably for a long time. Again, because, we're learning that PFAS is everywhere, and I mean, it's, when you have human contact on a reservoir like this, everything involved with human contact is gonna bring contamination along with it. Sunscreens, swim trunks, boats, docks, all that stuff have PFAS in them, boat coatings,
Dock coatings.
dock coatings, all the plastic things holding the docks up, floating, I mean, I don't know what has PFAS and what doesn't, but I know there's PFAS in a lot of that stuff, such as Trex decking, anything water repellent, right? Like, what do we take down to the lake when we're going to the lake? Everything water repellent, right? So, I think it's been there for a long time. I couldn't tell you what the levels were 5 years ago, all I know is what they are today. And we're gonna do it.
Test, more so than you ever have.
Yeah, and we're focused on removing what we know, what we see, we're removing that from the drinking water, and at the same time, trying to figure out, can we identify a source, an area, multiple sources in the community that we can then go try to mitigate that problem from doing what you're asking, these numbers gradually going up. So we wanna, mitigate what we have, and so we're doing everything we can.
Okay, just real quick to clarify, and thank you for everything that you've so you had mentioned it's not really concerned like our bathing water, like where
No.
we're showering.
No, there's a link on our website to the EPA. They have a fact sheet there and they specifically state that they do not believe that people get PFAS through their skin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, and because you mentioned too, you can only take so much off the top of the lake, so is that what you're testing, the top part? Can you not?
No.
And my misunderstanding.
We're testing, some of the samples are taken in more shallow water, but, most of the samples are taken from our pumps that are under
Oh, gotcha.
like 70 feet.
Yeah, now.
No, so it's
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. We'll
I think-
check the website for-
George, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question. Catherine mentioned it, I think, but I have a question for this gentleman. Is it true that the only way to remove PFAS from the water is reverse osmosis? You cannot filter it out? Is that true?
No, that's not true. Just like the gentleman, Greg, who was online, mentioned, ion exchange and, granular activated carbon. Those are two other technologies that basically absorb the PFAS onto the media, and they basically get to a point where it's, exhausted. It's absorbed so much it can't absorb it anymore. So then we have to remove the media and replace it. And unfortunately, like we do ion exchange right now with a different contaminant, gross alpha, and it attaches to the media, and we're able to backwash that and get the gross alpha off, and we send that down the line. But PFAS is something different because it's a forever chemical, and so people aren't allowed to regenerate it, backwash it, and send the contaminants downstream to the next person. So that's where these technologies, like you mentioned, they're to destroy them is pretty much incineration. So they need to we would basically swap media. They would come take our old media that's spent, give us new media, take it off somewhere and dispose of it properly through incineration, most likely.
But for a homeowner, that wanted to like filter the water, they would probably, are you saying that they would have to use the reverse osmosis system?
So I think I misspoke earlier. I think I said ion exchange. What I meant was we do not recommend reverse osmosis for a home. It is totally everyone's personal decision, but it would be overkill. It would waste a lot of water. And as Mr. Guillen said, there's a lot of waste associated with reverse osmosis, and then you have to remineralize it. And we have such beautiful water.
And not to mention the
Just
cost.
PFAS. And the cost, right?
Yeah, okay.
So, but there are filters that are successful at removing
So
PFAS.
that's
so-
good to know.
Yeah,
That's good to
so
know.
NSF certified, and then,
Because from what they came out at first, it said that there wasn't a filter that could remove the PFAS. You had to use the reverse osmosis, and if that's not true,
I'm
that's
sorry.
good to know. That's good to know.
There's just a lot on social media that is incorrect.
Yeah.
And I apologize for that, so I would say, our website has the facts.
Well, thank you.
Okay, yes, sir.
Since the testing for PFAS has been federally mandated, I'm assuming that these similar types of tests have taken place in Silverwood Lake and Big Bear Lake.
That's what I want to ask.
Do you have that information, and how do we compare it to those places? I would think that'd be really important for understanding our unique circumstance.
We have made contact with Klawa, and they're waiting on results. We have not made contact with Big Bear.
I have made contact with Big Bear, but they don't use Big Bear for drinking water. They're installing a reverse osmosis system, but that's because they're gonna do IPR, which is an exciting project. It's called, Replenish Big Bear or something like that. And they're actually going to be, recycling water, but for IPR, you definitely have to use reverse osmosis. There are uses for that.
So is Big Bear's water, have they found PFAS in their drinking?
I don't know if they have tested for it, but I'll ask them.
That would seem to be a real high priority thing to know.
Yeah, we've definitely asked Klawa. It is a priority of ours because yes, we purchase water from them, and we're very interested in knowing that, so.
I contacted Claw, and they said they don't have any in their boards.
They don't have any, they said?
The gentleman that does the testing, I ran into him at the building department, and he said their water supply less than 1%.
Okay. I've heard that, the State Water Project has pretty low levels.
Yeah, so just keep in mind that Silverwood is all state water project water that comes from the Delta. And there's no natural runoff from the Silverwood.
How much do we have to pay to join them?
Um,
Be cheaper.
yeah, that's a lot of money to sign up with club.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions? Online.
Go ahead,
Good
Scott.
evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and I appreciate the discussion on the forever chemicals. I guess my question is based on what LACSD knows about the contamination levels of our water. Will LACSD state to its ratepayers that number one, the water being delivered to our homes and businesses is safe to drink? And two, since the fish in both Lake Arrowhead and Grass Valley lakes are consuming the water, are the fish safe to eat? Because I think they are very much tied together. Thank you.
Matt, can you answer respond to the first question? I mean, according to the standards we've been given by the government.
I'll jump in there. So the EPA actually right now has a level of 70, but it's just a health advisory number. Nobody has come out and made a statement as to what level is safe. Because the EPA expects that 80% of your exposure to PFAS is going to be from your environment. And only 20% of your exposure is going to be from drinking water. So this is why they've set the drinking water limit as low as they have. And they keep lowering the limit as the labs get better at detecting lower and lower limits. So it was at 70, the state was at 10, our drinking water is at 9. So it depends on the regulator. The rulemaking they're going through right now, the EPA is proposing 4. But they're not saying that's the safe limit. They're saying this is the only source that we can control is drinking water. We can't control that you're gonna, get it from your Teflon pan or so. We can only follow the regulations that we are held to. And when we do that, we know it's safe. And that's what we're doing. We're gonna follow the regulation.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And fish, I think we talked about, we don't really control fish or test that. The fish, I think, is beyond our capability and beyond our jurisdiction. So I don't know is there, but I can ask the question, is there any way or any entity that tests fish?
There are people who test fish. The question I would have is, how long has that fish been in Lake Arrowhead? I mean, you would need to tag them and track them and know, in order to do a good study. I think, I'm not saying we won't do that, but it may be interesting if we can find some studies of other people who have already tested fish. At what level was the PFOA and at what level, how was that fish exposed? Maybe we can get some more information and find out, but
Catherine, everything that I've read so far regarding fish is that the levels of forever chemicals in the fish are much higher than the levels of the water they are swimming in. And that would be my concern, that they seem to be a sponge or, a collector of these chemicals by nature of how they live. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Catherine, any other questions from other people?
Karen, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to discuss the wastewater collection system maintenance that's occurred on, in the report. But before I talk about that, I just want to read one sentence that's directly on the EPA. The sentence says on the EPA's website, the sentence says the main ways people can be exposed to PFAS, and this is ascending from the most, the number one way, drinking contaminated municipal or private well water. Number 2 is eating fish contaminated with PFAS. And number 3 is eating food grown that's contaminated with PFAS. So I don't know where the 80%, 20% deal is coming from. That's on the EPA's website, and I just Googled it a second ago because I was curious. Just wanted to let everyone know about that. So I wanted to discuss the wastewater collection system report that you guys put out today. You guys have this sentence, it says, in total, the district has slip lined 10.2 miles, 90% of its transmission main that runs around the entire lake, and is working towards completing the remaining 10% soon. So this question is actually for Matt Brooks. The 10% that hasn't been completed, we're talking about the pipe that encircles the lake. It's the sewer pipe that's nearest to the lake. Can you tell me where the 10% is that has not been slip lined yet? Where is that specifically around the lake?
Meadow Bay.
Yeah, the area would be from Meadow Bay all the way back to Blue Jay Bay. That's the remaining portion.
Okay, so looking at all the data you guys collected, all the different bays, has Blue Jay Bay been tested for PFAS yet, or are we waiting for that?
Right?
Blue Jay Creek, I think, but I don't know about the bay.
Yeah, you have Blue Jay Creek, which it's actually Little Bear Creek and Blue Jay Creek fork into each other, but the Blue Jay Bay is missing on the lake.
Yeah, I don't know that we've taken a specific sample from Blue Jay Bay.
Is it something we can do?
Yeah, I mean, Meadow Bay is where we're sampling is not slip line. Right where we're sampling, it's where the slip lining ends. But we'll take that into consideration.
Okay, and then the second question that I had, looking at that page that if you can look at it, the wastewater collection system, Matt just read that. So there's a statement at the bottom. It says, since the adoption of the cease and desist order on from March of 2013 through June of 2023, so in a 10-year span, LACSD has replaced 14,510 linear feet of pipeline. So a mile is roughly 5,000 feet. So that's 2.7 miles total. But the question that I have is not about the 2.7 miles of pipe that you guys replaced. You guys release a report every January. It's called the Wastewater Collection Report. And it shows there's a section that says pipe rehabilitation, new pipe, parentheses, new pipe installation. So for 2023, it's stated, I added up the number of feet of pipe you guys replaced. For 2023, it was 184 feet. 2022 was 398 feet, and 2021 it was 220 feet. The last 2 years were 2020 was 240, and 2019 was 348. That comes up to a total of 1,390 feet of pipe that's been replaced. So that's 0.26 miles. That's a quarter of a mile of pipe that's been replaced. So where's the other 13,000 feet of pipe that you guys have replaced? Where is that coming from? Because I'm adding up to 1,390, but your statement says you've replaced 14,510 feet. So where is the other 13,000 coming from? Did you guys replace 13,000 in the first 5 years? Because can you tell me where the pipe, where the 13,000 is coming from?
Yeah, I'm not sure where your source is, but I get your point. And we're not necessarily going to go out and just replace pipe if it doesn't need to be replaced. If you look at Mike's report on page 36, we inspect at least 40 miles of sewer pipeline a year. And we know where our problem areas are. We have some older areas, but and those are the places where we're concentrating. And sometimes those places maybe don't have a lot of linear feet when they're replaced, but that we suspect them to be more of a problem than other areas. So we have a very good plan, a very systematic plan, and it's something that we work with the state. So you will have to give us.
Yeah, I understand I understand your plan, but you're giving a report, you're saying you've replaced 14,510 feet, so Lake Arrowhead has about 200 miles of sewer pipe, so you're making the claim that you replaced. Can I ask my question?
Go ahead, Garen.
Okay, so I'm not, all I'm trying to figure out is, you have this statement, you're saying you've replaced 14,510 feet. Lake Arrowhead has 200 miles of sewer pipe, and you're claiming that you've replaced 2 3/4 miles in the past 10 years. But I'm adding up the numbers, and it's coming out to 1/4 of a mile in the past 5 years. So is that a typo, or is it correct?
No, I think it's correct. And I think you're looking at a limited number of years. I would say that the cease and desist order, when it was issued by Lahontan, they issued it for a reason, okay? Because we weren't complying, quite honestly, and that was over 10 years ago. Since then, we've made a very concerted effort, a hard push to make sure that the pipelines, the wastewater pipelines that they were concerned about have been replaced, and we've addressed that. I think so. Mike's presentation indicated that we've had a very low, extremely low level of wastewater leaks, and right now Lahontan is they're happy with us because they've seen that we've responded. So whether it's been 14,000 or 140 or 200 miles, the idea is that we've replaced and we've addressed this problem, which was a serious problem because we were in trouble with them. And that's why they issued the cease and desist order. And then within the past 10 years, we've addressed that problem to their satisfaction. So they're happy with us. They're the people that regulate us. And, we've addressed the problem and we're in compliance. So I hope that answers your question. And thank you for the question. Is there anybody else who has questions? Okay.
Patrick?
Yes. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, can the water be treated, the lake be treated? I know that Skinner Lake, they drink that water. They have a water treatment plant there. They also check their fish too. They have some type of thing where they shock the water, the fish come up. They test the fish and then they let the fish go. And they bluestone the water. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. But is there a way that the lake can be treated without an environmental impact? And my other question is, we don't put salt on our roads anymore because it ends up in the lake. So we're using rock. Can the rock be tested? Maybe that would solve this problem. It sounds kind of isolated, although the gentleman said they found this so many trillion parts per trillion in 2 of the wells, I think he said. I could be mistaken. So that would take it off the isolated list. But maybe the rock that we put on the street could have something of that nature. And with the snow, that could be something there too that might want to be tested. I know he said he's going to take 16 tests of all areas. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, Patrick, I think PFAS is a chemical produced by chemical companies. The rock is naturally occurring gravel.
I did look at cinders.
Doesn't it depend on where we get our rock though? I mean, do we know where the rock's coming from?
I did look at cinders, and we also looked at they put this coating on the road, and it appears that there are no PFAS chemicals in the cinders, but I could get confirmation from Caltrans on that, or the county.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you guys are aware of it. So yeah, and then you said 2 of the wells showed, I know this is like so many parts per trillion. This is like this is still like a super fresh lake. I mean, this is like nothing, but I know that we have to go through the EPA to test all this stuff. And have we been doing this for the last 5 years? The testing?
No, we tested wastewater in 2020, 2021, but we were not even really able to start testing drinking water until 2023.
Oh. Okay. Okay. And then how far away are our wells from the lake? I mean, just approximately.
Yeah, they're located in Grass Valley Basin, so they're in a separate watershed entirely. And there's no aquifer there. It's we're getting water out of fractured granite here. So the wells are mostly non-detect, and which is good news for us. We do have one well that has a little bit, but that well is the bottom of the drainage, so we're going to look at that one well.
I see. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes,
Okay.
Gary, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Regarding the discussion of the recycle system in the water at the golf course, I appreciate the fact that it might be minuscule compared to the volume of the lake water. However, I think we'd be remiss not to consider the fact that it's I don't know when it was installed, but let's just say it was 10 to 12 years ago. It's been a long time for that to have the opportunity to contaminate the at least the well water. And looking at the CDO, when they say that the rate of contaminant from the PFAS in Arrowhead compared to the other cities down in the valley, which are much more exposed to industry and the chemical industry, and those that have a lot of coatings on various different materials. And that seemed to be a very strong issue as far as this CDO, and they came up and said that testing the recycled water had such a high value. What was it, 37 parts compared to 4.8 and 5 in other cities down below? It just doesn't make any sense to think that up in the mountains, we've got such clear, good water, lake water, that we'd be contaminated more than industrial areas down below. It just doesn't seem to make any sense. And when the EPA is talking about something as small as 4 nanoparticles per million, that's tiny. And to think that we'd want to have to treat the water continuously, water treatment plants running forever are extremely expensive. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't look more at the recycled water system. And the pipes have been in there a long time, especially ACP piping, that an early product way back when. You don't know that it's leaking or not. I mean, it could just be porous. How do you test for leaks? If you said you don't have any leaks, how do you know? But I just want to throw out that it just makes a little sense to put a little bit more attention into attempting to find the source, eliminate the source, and correct the problem, than rather treat the water system every day of every month of every week of every year. My 2 thoughts. That's all. Thank you.
Well, in looking at our testing, it does seem that we have a large number of sources. And the lake seems to have the highest concentration Lake Arrowhead, I should say. Grass Valley Lake, which is closest to the recycled water, has a lower concentration than Lake Arrowhead. So,
And the wells are non-detect.
and the wells are non-detect, and the wells are in the Grass Valley area. So I'm not a scientist, but there, you can draw your conclusions from there. And attacking the source, there seems to be multiple sources, which we would, is like whack-a-mole. I mean, I think we're concerned with the drinking water. And that's where we really have our jurisdiction. And that's what people, I think, are mostly concerned with. So that's, I think, our focus is attacking the drinking water. If we could eliminate the source, that'd be great, but I'm not sure we can.
Well, looking at the process over the entire nation, the biggest problems people have had were from the chemical industries, from all the coating companies, 3M and et cetera. Major ticket items. That's where the serious problems are coming from. I don't think it's coming from little pots and pans being washed in the sink.
Well, we don't know that yet.
So the test results that you see online are are just a few. So like our EPA results are online, but all the other testing we're doing is not online. So if you look at those results, there are some areas that are a lot higher than us, and there's a lot of agencies who haven't even started testing yet.
Yeah, but how do you explain the cities down below having much lower rates?
Some of them
that doesn't make any sense.
Some are much higher.
Some are higher, and we don't have an explanation. We don't.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
We have a two-pronged approach.
Yeah, but it would seem to point to a single or a very few sources, not a whole bunch of things that you have to investigate 50 different sources. What are all the sources around it? The trees and rocks?
Yeah. Part of our research and hiring the engineer is to look at the sources, but our main focus is to make sure the drinking water is safe. That's our jurisdiction. But thank you.
Can I add a couple
Sure,
quick things? So just so everyone understands that this UCMR 5, the required finished water sampling of the drinking water, that's a 2-year period, 2023 through 2025. We volunteered, requested to be on the front end of that. So that's why we're almost completed here, and we would have been completed had Cedar Glen been online when we started this. But so there's other agencies out there that are not complete, or they're not, just barely starting. So these interactive maps that people are seeing online are going to start getting a little more fluid, a little more populated when more results start becoming available. So no, it's not just us. Secondly, just to answer your question, a couple things. Asbestos concrete pipe, AC pipe, has a life span 75 to 100 years. 1. 2, we don't deliver recycled water with ACP pipe. We deliver with C900 plastic pipe. And we pressure test, to answer your question, once per year prior to the recycled water system going online, because we're required to. So we pressure test, we flush, and then we are required to tour the country club on a quarterly basis, but prior to startup, to make sure there's no overspray. We inspect. There's a whole program that we're required to hold the country club to, because there are one recycled water customer. So there are many boxes we check prior to delivering water, recycled water, and while we're delivering recycled water, we're required to continually check those boxes, meet with the superintendent, tour the whole golf course, have them turn on every sprinkler, see if it's overspraying. And I mean, it's a very strict program and guideline that we have to follow. So.
Good. 2 more. Yeah, let's finish these. Yeah. Go ahead, Catherine.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I came in late to the meeting, but were there any statements or facts put out there about the testing of the sewage lines for leaks as of late?
Yes, at the beginning of the meeting before the PFAS segment, Mike talked about, sewage leaks, and the past year has been very, very good for us. So, and maybe you've heard the discussion about the cease and desist order, but over the past 10 years, we have greatly reduced the amount of leaks, and the Lahontan, who monitors that, is very happy with us.
Okay, thank you for that info. And regarding the whole 200 and something miles or whatever it is system, is it fair to say that some of the statements I've seen that it's at the end of its lifespan or service?
No, I don't think so. What we are constantly rehabilitating and slip lining and protecting the system. And I would say, you know, when I came on the board more than 10 years ago, we were, as I said before, we were in pretty serious trouble, and we weren't up to the standards we should have been. And in the 10 years, we've made a very significant effort to rectify that. And now Lahontan, who monitors that, has gone from looking at us very hard to being very happy with us.
Well, good to hear. But theoretically, based on the recent testing, this high level in Lake Arrowhead could be a result of the previously leaking 200-mile lines, or especially the line around the lake, could it not?
I think anything's possible, but I think the safest thing I can be confident in saying is there are many different sources of PFAS. And from looking at the tributaries and the different dispersion of Grass Valley Lake and Papoose Lake, which don't have that much interaction with Lake Arrowhead, which seems to have the highest concentration. I don't think that Lake Arrowhead is being contaminated with our wastewater.
I will just say that the CDO is related to water getting into the sewer. And that is because a sewer line is hydraulically designed to utilize gravity. So it is moving at a certain velocity in order to make sure all those eggshells are moved or whatever solids are in there. And so they're designed to contain sewage. It is very unlikely that even though we were having problems with stormwater getting in, it does not mean that sewage is getting out.
Got it. Okay, well, and I'm happy that this board is saying that they're going to focus on their jurisdiction, being the drinking and the sewage portion of the equations. And it was mentioned earlier, Big Bear came up, and I was kind of surprised that there was not an answer like, yeah, we've already talked to, you know, a like community like Big Bear, or even, you know, outside of the state of California. But that would be the first thing I would want to look into, and trying to find the source of this problem, because I think we all agree the greatest asset of our community is the lake itself. And like Gary pointed out, the previous person, that this is an asset we need to protect, and we need to be proactive and find the source of it, because we all relate to it, and it improves all of our property values and our company. But what I'm saying is, I think it really would behoove yourselves to talk to a Big Bear, talk to even an Elsinore, Canyon Lake, Lake McCall up in Idaho, you just to find out, hey, are you experiencing similar problems? What's where are you in your life cycle of your sewage lines and leakage and whatnot, and focus again on your jurisdiction. And then the other question I had would be, who was this board, or the gentleman that was speaking earlier, were you on the board when the LACSD tried to make a bid to oversee the AWAC?
Yeah, this is a different subject. Okay.
No, it's very important.
I think we can say, Matt,
you're here to serve the people of Lake Arrowhead with their water and their sewage. That's in your jurisdiction. So why waste focus and resources on trying to take over AWAC or a solar farm that I've heard about down in Hesperia? Why not just focus on what you're supposed to be doing and avoid cease and desist orders?
Good thought. Appreciate it. Thanks. I'll get to you after. We have a couple more people online.
Hi, this is Denise Loxton. And John, you mentioned that you were going to have multiple sources looking for multiple sources. And my concern is a lot of people that are on septic tanks, their washing machine, they're told not to dump their water into the septic tanks because it can harm the septic tanks. So they're dumping their water out onto a dry well or onto their property. And a lot of the laundry detergent and stain removers contain PFAS. So I'd like you to look into that. I know that there's septic tanks in Crestline, Cedar Pines Park, Rim Forest, Blue Jay, Twin Peaks, Lake Arrowhead, Deer Lodge Park, and Sky Forest. So I think that's a major concern that could be a possible source of that. And also in January 2022, California banned PFAS in the firefighting foam. But prior to that, it's in firefighting foam. We've had 3 major fires around this lake where they've used the firefighting foam. So it could be in our groundwater. We get a lot of rain. That could also be contributing to PFAS in our lake. So I'd appreciate if you could look into that source also. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Okay, we have another couple up here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Carlos.
Hello, hi, Carlos Ulloa here. I've been using the lake recreationally for probably 22 years. And I'm just curious to know, what can I do as a single person? How can I mitigate my impact? You mentioned that Trex may have it in it, my boat may have it, my sunscreen. How do we get that information to the thousands of people that use the lake and start taking responsibility for the PFAS that we as individuals contaminate the lake with?
I'm not sure what one person could do.
Well, that's the issue, is that it's not just one person, but it's thousands of people using sunscreen that may have it, or boats. And here we are pointing the fingers at other people instead of really taking the responsibility as users and as stewards of that lake and trying to mitigate everything we do to keep that lake from being pristine.
I think it's safe to say it's too early to sit in our investigation or in the investigations and research that's been done throughout the country to say, let's not use this certain product or let's not do this certain activity, to say that would have an appreciable impact on water quality.
Okay.
It's Catherine or Matt or.
I'll look for some resources to see
Yeah.
what people can do. I mean, obviously, you might also want to check your property, make sure you don't have any old paint cans or, things that are contaminating anyway. Even if they don't have PFAS, we want to keep our waterways clean.
Yeah, there was a big movement for artificial grass because we wanted to mitigate water usage, but I'm sure there's some PFAS in artificial grass, so that's running off into the lake.
Let's get to that artificial grass. That's at the top of my list.
Yeah.
And Carlos, I think earlier tonight, if you were listening in, a gentleman asked how long we've been running the tests. And it's my understanding that the labs have only been able to recently give us accurate results in these single-digit parts per trillion. That's why we can now start tracking it. But we certainly don't have any long-term detailed analysis that we can provide because we just don't have that much that's been done. However, someone pointed out that we've had 3 major fires here. I've been here for all of them, and that was used around the lake. Well, guess what? Foam got in the lake, the PFAS got in the lake, and it's not going. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's going into the lake, because it's a forever chemical. It's not leaving. And so that's something we're now trying to determine. And on the providing of drinking water, that's where we're trying to focus in to get this resolved and resolved quickly with options that our community can use to protect everybody. I think that's what we're trying to address as we go through this, but thank you for pointing out that everybody's got their own responsibility as well.
Yeah, it'd just be fantastic to get some kind of check sheet or something to understand where me as a person, you know, as an individual user can mitigate and help everyone out and in turn, you know, be an example. So thank you.
Thank you for your willingness to help.
Always. I love the place.
Okay, well, we'll remember that. Get that guy's phone number.
Carlos.
Yeah, I would think also, you brought up a great point. What happens I mean, we need to be careful about it. We're all drinking this water, we're swimming in it, catching fish, whatever, but what happens if we monitor it specifically for 20 years and science is getting better every day, science gets better. And in 20 years, there's no more in the lake than there is right now. You know, not that I'm making light of anything, but you know, I don't want everybody to get in some mass panic. And I talk to a lot of people on this mountain all the time, every day. I like talking to people. Everybody is, I don't want to say they're in a panic, but everybody is alarmed. And everybody, I don't want to say they believe the worst in it, but some of us do. We look at worst case scenarios sometimes, and we immediately go to the worst thing that's going to happen to us. You know, we're not going to be able to swim in the lake anymore, or eat the fish. I don't eat the fish anyways, but you know, we need to be careful about letting ourselves be led down this road of the world's falling apart. You know, it is, but we can't help that sometimes. But Catherine made a great point earlier when she said they were talking about why there are certain bodies of water or drinking systems down the hill that are so high. Well, not all of them are. And if you've ever taken a statistics class like I have, which I hated, one of the first things the professor says in there is you can skew statistics any way you want them. As a government agency, we can't. We are not allowed to do that. We are a government agency. We are not allowed to skew things. We are not allowed to, in the end, we can't lie about things. We can't give false reports. We are held to a higher standard than somebody putting out a piece of paper on the internet, or whatever you call that, an email on the internet stating their facts about things. Because you can pick and choose what you want to put on your letter and say, look at all this, this is horrible over here. It may not be horrible. There are people that will always look for the bad in things, always look for the hole in your armor. And we need to be very careful about what we believe and what we take in as facts. So I mean, there's always that saying that I was told for many years in my previous job is, don't believe anything anybody tells you and only half of what you see. And that's the truth. So I would say we're doing the best we can do. We all drink the same water here. We're all on the same side of the fence, in my opinion. We just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing here and that everybody's safe and our community's safe and the water's safe. So I just want to say that I'm kind of getting irritated with all these facts that are being thrown because they're not facts.
Thanks, Steve. Do we have anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to say thank you guys for jumping on this, and I think you'll find a lot of the fire retardant dropped on the Lake Arrowhead area over since 1960. We've probably got some PFAS or polyfluoral alkaloids in them. We used to use them for, especially the long chain ones, to suppress fire. So that might be where it comes from.
And it's there.
And it's there.
It's there.
It's not going to go away. So.
But we're gonna get it out of the drinking water.
Yeah,
that's
and what I've been telling everybody is that we are concerned, but we are focused on getting the problem resolved.
Right.
And we're moving swiftly. We're gonna have We've made it a point to make sure that the public is getting all the information we've got as we're developing it. But I don't want anybody to think that this problem has been around that we've known about for a long time, because it just hasn't.
And I think you're probably gonna use the carbon filter method. I can't see water in my lawn with RO water, so.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, thank you for coming. We appreciate all your comments. We appreciate your interest. We're gonna be calling Carlos.
Carlos.
He's our favorite
Oh, wait.
person now. You
Yeah.
got one more?
We have additional. agenda.
I know,
Yeah, we,
but I saw people standing up. I wanted to thank them before they leave.
We still have a little more meeting.
You're staying for the rest. Very nice. Okay, so next we have item number 8. Scott.
Thank you, President Worm. This is the yearly review of ordinance number 65, water connection policy of the Lake Arrowhead Community Services District. And we visit this every January. This is the ordinance that limits the number of water meters to 60 a year, 5 per month. And we had 7 meters this year. And staff doesn't recommend any changes at this time.
All right, thank you. Any public comment? Catherine?
No.
Okay, no public comment? Very good. Next, Scott, thank you, Scott. Next, Catherine, general manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just wanted to inform you that LAFCO approved our application to annex the farm.
Yeah, very good.
So that is completed, and thank you to BBK for their help with that process. Also,
Thank you, Joe.
there's some information here about a current cloud seeding program that is occurring in our area that I just wanted to make you aware of.
They're not using PFAS to see the cloud.
No, I looked.
They use it everywhere else. So.
Yeah, it's the artificial turf. I never liked that. All right, any board members want to go to some more meetings? No, thank you. Okay, Dave? Tonight? There's one over at the ALA starting at 8 o'clock. Any board member comments? No? Okay. All right, motion to adjourn?
Board member meetings, the attendance at the training.
Oh, I've been trained.
All right, very good. All right, we've been commenting how that is needed.
Glad to hear you've been trained, Bruce.
I was able to get rid of the shock collar. And I completed the ethics training.
Did your wife approve of the training?
She ran the shock collar.
Okay. Very good. Okay, motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you for
Thank
everybody
you
for
folks
coming.
for coming. We really appreciate it.